Hello, it's me, the Simon, and today we are going to be looking at the Brutal 1800 V2 keyboard. It is most definitely a keyboard. So yeah, let's get into it. So this is the Canon keys, Brutal V2 1800. Now this is the V2 of the Brutal line. Some of us may remember it from the Brutal 65, which was more of a budget board. This is not a budget board, but keeps the same name, and we're going to talk about that. It's an 1800 layout, very comfortable layout for productivity, and we're going to talk about that as well. It's designed by AI03 and sold in stock by Canon Keys, which is a solid bet. That's a fantastic combo. It comes in black, gray, navy, purple, and green. I've got my green unit here, and you'll notice that it is two-tone and seamless. So the top will be the color that you buy, the bottom will be silver. It uses cast zinc weights, which has not been done before, but it's actually pretty interesting. So we're going to talk about that as well. And its mounting type is a single-sided gasket, which I'll show you. It runs a 6.5 degree angle, and it's about 1.9 kilos built, which is actually great for a big board. Uses a daughter board, offers hot swap and solder PCBs. It's $400 in stock with, decent plate, carrying case, some little bonuses. That's pretty cool. So yeah, that's that's the Brutal 1800 V2. So let's roll the intro and see what happens. And here we are with the Brutal 1800 V2. Now, before we get into it, let's get the disclosures out of the way. This is a review unit. It was sent to me by Canon Keys to review. By my own rules, I don't get to keep review units. I either have to pay for them, send them back, or destroy them. And I'm not going to beat around the bush. I am going to pay to keep this board because I like it very much. Second part of the disclosure is, again, this is by Canon Keys, also known as UPAS, the man in charge. I like UPAS as a person, and generally that shouldn't affect my thoughts about any particular product, but I trust his history as a vendor, and there's a very short list of vendors right now that I would consider good. He's on that list, so as a result, he gets a little bit more leeway than somebody else would. Okay? Disclosure number 3. I love big boards, okay? I just like them. It's very hard to do an unbiased review when it's a big board. Now, the reason why I love the 1800 layout so much, actually, story time. All right? Like 3 years back, 3.5 years back, I don't remember. I was working at my old office. I had a coworker there named Basil. And Basil was all into my keyboards. He loved typing on them. And as a result, I'd give him boards to just break in and just be like, bro, this is a nice board. Enjoy it. And he did. And I got my free break in. He had a birthday coming up. And I'm like, all right, I want to offer him something that's not like too wild, in terms of price. Or it was Secret Santa or something. I don't remember. So I talked to my friend Paul. And Paul was like, hey, I have a G80 1800. It's basically worthless. It's worth $20 here. It's like breaking the switches, maybe swap out the springs, and give him something solid. So I took the G80 1800 to the office to break it in, as I normally do, over the course of a couple weeks. And as I used it, I developed, one, a love for G80s, which I know a lot of people don't like G80s because they sound weird, but I love that weird sound. And two, I really started to love 1800 from a productivity standpoint. Because from a productivity standpoint, it's got everything you need. It's got main layer arrows, which if you're doing a lot of Excel work, you're working with spreadsheets, you're moving stuff around, having main layer arrows, very handy. And two, you've got a numpad with nav. So you can turn on the numlock, have your nav, or turn off the numlock, have your nav, turn on the numlock, have your numbers. Very, very handy. And the nice thing about an 1800 is this sits about like 2.5 centimeters bigger than like a Jaguar, for example. So it's barely indistinguishable size-wise when on your desk. It seems like it's a lot more, but it's really not. It's just so comfy to use. So anyway, I typed on that board for a while, and I think I spring swapped it and like lubed it live on stream, twitch.tv/Simon, a couple of years back, and I gave it to my coworker Basil. And ever since that day, I still miss it. And this board has been able to scratch that itch for me, which is why I like it so much. All right. All right. We got everything. All right. We got it. Let's go. That's all the disclosures. So got a green unit here. These caps are filthy. That's how you know I've been using it thoroughly. Okay. Okay. For those of you that don't know, for any keyboard review I do, I spend about 4 weeks on average with the board, which may seem like a long time. It's not really a long time because it takes a while for your brain, no matter how big brain you are, okay, to get over the honeymoon period where like everything seems great, but like as you spend more time with it, you start noticing more and more things, which is why I like to spend 4 weeks with the board. So from the get-go, this lovely keyboard here comes in a hard case. Nice hard case. Okay. This is the aluminum plate that comes by default. I have a PP plate in here. No, wait, is it palm? All right. It's a PP plate. Unless they don't offer PP, then it's palm. Okay. I know my brain. I know what I want. So comes in a relatively custom hard case, fits comfy. And you got this big old, where's the brand? Ah, there it is. This big old Canon Keys branded. I don't know if this is a microfiber cloth. This feels like a macro fiber cloth. It's thick, which is good. Because like generally you have the option of just slapping your board in here if you're going to commute. And by the way, not a heavy board, which is great. Boom, drop it in there. Done. Or you can just wrap it in this, shove it in a bag, which I don't recommend because you have a hard case. But yeah, comes in a hard case. So in terms of the unboxing experience, kind of great. Not going to lie. Oh. And to be fair, like Canon Keys hard cases are pretty good. So with Geon hard cases, generally the issue is like this area here feels like it's going to rip out of the board. You also get a place for a nameplate, which you don't get with a Geon hard case. In any case, these are good hard cases. So this being included in the deal for an in-stock board is pretty cool. All right. And of course you get this, which, you know, can be used to protect it, but can also be used to clean it because you forgot to clean it before your keyboard review stream video. And people are going to see how filthy your hands are. But listen, the filth is just a sign of love. Okay, the filth just proves that I like the board. Okay, you know I mean it when I have to wipe it down this hard. That's how you know it's legit. Whew. All right. So let's talk about the nomenclature as we tour the board. Now, a couple years back, I did the review for the Brutal 65, which was a budget board. Okay, and it got a glowing review because it was a good board from a good maker. Okay, this is also a good board from a good maker. Now, if you remember the original Brutal line, you'll know of the Rect 1800, which was their budget line 1800. This is not their budget line 100. But it keeps the Brutal name. Brutal did not mean budget. Brutal is to do with the brutalist design. For those of you that don't know what brutalism is, I don't know, Google it because I can't explain it because I don't even understand it. It's just big and blocky, okay? So it's named the Brutal because of its design, okay? It's big, it's blocky, squared off, all that. So this is no longer a budget board. So this gets the treatment of being reviewed as a higher end board. It's $400 in stock, which equates in my brain, by the way, to about $350. If it was like group buy price, maybe $340. In which case, it's a great mid-tier board in terms of price. Okay, so let's do a little tour. Sorry for all the talking. All right, so first thing we notice is F13 layout. Cool. I built it with the correct bottom row. If this had a 6U spacebar support, that would be great. It does not. I do enjoy a 6U spacebar support because then you can have a Win key here or you can have a 1U on this side. and it's just more keys to work with, which is nice to have. There were actual 1800s, G80 1800s that had a 6U. Okay, so I'm not just making it up. All right. Bezels are basically uniform. This looks like 8 millimeter, 8 millimeter, 8 millimeter. I'm just eyeballing this. Okay, it might be 9, and just like with the chamfers and everything, it looks like 8, which is well done design wise. And we can see that the arrows come down pretty far down, leaving what looks like a 4 mil gap, maybe a 3 mil gap. Okay, if that's 4 mil, then that's definitely 9. There we go. Measurement. So top is fairly simple, looks good. This is the only part of my unit that is actually anodized green, similar to your units if you purchase one of these. Only the top will have the color. I've never looked at it and been like, oh no, the bottom is a different color, because I've never noticed, because it's been sitting on my desk, because it's a good keyboard. It's how you know you have a good keyboard. A good board is a board you're ever only going to see the top of. A bad board, you're only ever going to see the bottom of. All right, wait, let's see how guilty I am. Okay, except the I1, okay? It's faces only. Okay? It's faces only. So, I1 bad board confirmed. All right. So back here, we can see that the top piece comes up a little bit, making room for this a large piece back here. And when I say this piece, it's all part of the bottom. In terms of, design simplicity, it is rather simply designed. You've got a top, you've got a bottom, you've got no external weights. So the exterior is nice and simple, and it doesn't need to be complex. So from the back, it's got a little bit going on. So this is the brutalism right there. You see that? See that brutalism? That's a good brutalism right there. I once Googled brutalism and forgot what it meant. USB port cutout, fantastic. This is the best USB port cutout I have ever seen, because I could go in there with this and it's just fine. I could go in there with a USB-A and it would fit. So in terms of connector compatibility, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. What you may notice is that normally with a seamless case, I don't know if this would actually be called seamless, but I'm just going to consider it seamless because you don't see the seam. But here, instead of coming straight down, we've got a little chamfer here, and I can show you on the macro cam. Check out that little chamfer. So it comes down, and then you've got a chamfer before it hits the bottom, which is nice. It's the it's the little design elements that like really show how good of a designer has designed this. Same thing here. Instead of being a perfectly flat bottom, so bottom looks flat from this angle, right? But this actually slopes forward. It's a nice little cut right there. Okay, and then the big old butt right here, big old butt, comes in with the butt cheek line, I guess. You can tell that design is my passion very clearly. On the back, we've got the Canon Keys logo, nice and simple, doesn't stick out, not bad. Side profile, again, what is this, 6.5 degrees? So it's like, some people would consider it low angle, but like 6 degree is like what I would consider cherry angle. Some people would consider 8-degree cherry angle. And, anyone that disagrees can fist fight me in the Macca's car park. All right, side profile, very nice. Again, we've got small little chamfer up top, big chamfer at the bottom, and then we get to this bottom piece here, and even here, there's a tiny little chamfer, which is to be expected because you're not going to make a 90-degree angle. Otherwise, you're going to get chipping, and you're not going to be able to like properly finish it. So, pretty good. Now, at the front of the board, it actually becomes pretty much seamless, where the bottom and the top are pretty much right on top of each other. Again, little chamfer here. Okay, it's the little things. It's the little things. All right, and then we've got small little feet, flat bottom feet. Okay, let's do the all important bussy town test. Okay. Now, those of you that are Patreon subscribers would know that I have been asked to to test the bussy townability of every single keyboard and take a deeper look into the feet, as I would normally do into the screws. So you're welcome. All right, let's bussy town check. Here it is. Let's see if it can go around the roundabout. Okay, it takes a bit of force. Takes a bit of force. I can feel the desk mat trying to move. That's about 2.5 kilos of force. To bussy town it, this is in there. This is not easy to move. It's just not easy to move. It's easy to pick up. It's not a super heavy board. But the feet, they do a great job. And you can tell the feet do a great job, by the way. Is my bussy town crooked? It sure is. So you can tell when feet do a really good job from one little thing, okay? And that little thing is that. If you can see desk mat just gunk around your foot, you know the foot is doing a great job. If it just slides right over, like nice and smooth and leaves no marks, it means you're not really getting a good grip. Obviously, there are probably exceptions to this rule. I literally just made it up, okay? But it's right. Trust. All right, so exterior, not bad, okay? Big fan. Where'd my mouse go? Oh, there it is. It's not bad. Now, before we get into actually tearing it down, there's something that's kind of hard to tell that's in my notes and is one of the few things that really annoyed me with this board. Now, there's a little gap here, okay? Now, there are ways of designing a keyboard so you know you don't have a gap under the caps, right? And that's just determined by where you mount your plate. If you mount it too high, then people are going to see the bottom of your caps. If you mount it too low, then it's going to look terrible. This is actually right on the line where it's perfect. But as a result of it being perfect, if I'm sitting at the correct angle, I can see under the spacebar and I can actually see my spacebar switch. Okay? Takes just the right angle. Let me try and show you on camera. Now, this generally happens with gasket boards. If you like mount them too high or too low, then you might get issues, but I don't think I've mismounted it, though I might be wrong. So let's try and get the angle just right. All right, so right there, you see that? See that? Right there. Right there. You can just see the switch as it peeks its little head. Now, this could be a CRP spacebar issue, but the fact of the matter is I've never had this issue with this key set on another board, where specifically the gap here is a little bit bigger than it should be. Okay, that's just me nitpicking. Maybe I screwed up the installation. Anyway, let's get into the interior of the board. Oh wait, how do we get into the interior of the board? Well, it's screwless. Yay! Lovely. So let's try and remember where the frickin' screws are. So I guess there was one here, maybe? There was one indeed there. Okay, and maybe there was one here. Actually, I can actually see that one. So I'm not a big fan of screwless. Wait, did I just hallucinate seeing it? No, I must have seen a switch. Okay. Now, generally, I'm not a fan of screwless boards because when poorly implemented, you can actually see the screws like between the caps, and it's super annoying because what's the point of screwless if you always see the screws? This is well done screwless, but still suffers from the issue of, well, I have to take apart my board. Where the hell are the screws? And you're kind of just gambling. You're playing, you know, keycap roulette until you eventually find where all the screws go. There's another screw. All right. Were there side screws? I mean, if there were, it'd be here. All right, we're gonna assume there's no side screws. All right, okay, let me not use my memory. Let me big brain this and be like, if I was a keyboard designer, where would I put the screws? Absolutely one here. Absolutely one here. I would put one between the 0 and the delete for sure. Yep, there we go. And then I would do the very same thing up top, actually. So it'd be between the tab and the calc. Aha. Okay. Yep. Screw right there. Now, by that logic, between the F11 and the F12, there should be one. Yep, there sure is right there. Okay, all right. See, you just have to think like a big brain designer like AI03. And then there should be one. Ooh, now that'd be close to the blocker. So it's probably like here or here. Yep, there it is. It's there. So it's slightly off to the right of this one. Yep, there we go. Now, generally, I would also put one here. So probably between like boom, 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 boom. Yeah, between the F6 and the F7 is where I would put a screw. Oh, nope. It was between the F5 and the F6. Guess I'm not big brain enough. Okay, by this logic, there should also be a screw here. But just for symmetry, I guess. Indeed, there is. All right, now we're going to unscrew all of these and pray that these are all the screws. So, is this going to work? Nope. Shame. It's an actual Canon Keys like driver that I got for free when I did their Black Friday sale or whatever it was. All right, that looks like what, a hex 2? 2.5? Nope, that is a hex 1.5. Okay. So another issue with screwless is what you just saw, because not everybody has, surgeon grade hands. Trying to get at the screw means you're going to scratch the anodizing on the inside. And if you scratch it on the inside and you're physically looking at it all the time, and it just happens to be between two switches, which it has to be because you can't put a screw in the middle of a switch, then you're just going to be sad, okay? The correct implementation of screwless generally is to just do it on the bottom and then cover them with the feet, kind of like Geon boards. Alternatively, you just actually don't have screws, like the Cycle 7. There's a lot of really good ways to do screwless. I wouldn't consider having, very small interior screws that require me rubbing up against the interior anodization as something enjoyable. However, I'm somebody that will go through multiple builds before I get it just right, It depends what your target audience is. And if this was, for example, the more budget line, so like the Rect 1800, then yeah, I can see somebody where, their first assembly is going to be their last assembly. Realistically, they're not going to take it apart unless there's a problem. They're not going to go and fine tune it multiple times, opening it like 5-6 times like I would. But on this, which I would consider, decent mid-tier, right? In terms of price point, in terms of where it's aiming in the market, I think people like that would absolutely rebuild. Oh, that was all the screws. All right, so not terrible to deal with. It just requires two things. It requires one, remembering where the frickin' screws are, and two, being really careful to not scratch the interior of your board. Sometimes you can actually scratch the exterior of your board too, like if you're not really careful. I did that with my K, which also had incredibly small screws that were a pain to deal with. So there's our top off. Let's lift this. Okay, and what do we got? All right, so we got a decently long JST, which you love to see. So gives you plenty of space to work around with the board. You don't have to get in there with tweezers and slowly lift this and you've seen how bad it can get. But nice decent length JST where I can remove pretty much the entirety of the plate PCB assembly out of the way. That's great. That's absolutely great. Let's get it off the PCB. There we go. We'll talk about that later. All right, so that looks a little crooked. That probably explains why my spacebar was messed up. Unfortunately, I did not get enough gaskets for this. Now, I'm going to very quickly touch on this before we tour the rest. There is an instruction manual for how to actually put together a Brutal Series board, which is great. Unfortunately, it's only for the Brutal 65, which has completely different mounting points. Okay, issue number 2. The documentation says to put the gasket tabs on the plate, which, okay, fair enough. Except these were all the gaskets that I got. And I bought 2 plates. So either include more gaskets or change the instructions to say, hey, maybe put it on the case bottom. But yeah, more gaskets would have been nice because I can clearly tell that this is coming out too far, and that probably explains my spacebar issue. You know, you can't count on people being able to build it perfectly the first time. You know, people make mistakes, even people that have built lots of boards. You know, not everybody's like a surgeon. All right, let's look at the top first, then the bottom, and then we'll talk about the internals. All right, so top feels relatively light, which a top should. You know, there's no weights in here. It's fairly simple. Oh, oh, oh. And here is why we do not do screwless. So you see where that screw is? You see how I've completely destroyed the anodization there? Thanks, screwless. Thanks. Like I don't understand it. Like all it takes is like the tiniest little slip of like the tip of your driver, and this is now ruined basically. If you're gonna be, you know, that kind of person, like this wouldn't be an A stock board anymore, for example. And all it took was me assembling it. Please stop doing screwless in stupid ways, please, please. Okay, it's not good for anyone. Besides having like the checkbox of it's screwless, who the fuck cares? Okay, rant over. Top, fairly simple. We've got the screwless mounts. I'm going to pull the screws out before I flip it, otherwise they're going to go flying everywhere. But yeah, just there is no advantage to screwless whatsoever besides, ooh, the back will be pretty. So cover the screws. That's it. That's it. And to be fair, like I said before, a good board is a board that you are going to be seeing the front of a lot, never the back. And to be fair, like what is there to display on the back? Like if you had like some sort of like wild engraving and like multiple weights and like badges and whatnot, okay, fine. Then you can display the back. But in a situation like this, okay? Who the fuck is displaying the back? Who cares? Who cares? Okay? Oh, but Simon, but Brutalist. Okay, fine. Fine. Cover them with feet. That's it. And to be fair, like this is designed by AI03, who's like one of the best like designers when it comes to engineering of all time, like on par with Chion. But then, you know, he chooses to do something like this, or he was told to do something like this and didn't fight back hard enough. And now that I look closer, I can see another one for here. You see that? Very coincidental how all the scratches on my top case are right next to the screwless mount points. All right. And let's look at the inside of the top. There's a lot of complex machining here, actually. Check that out. So the mount type is single side gasket. So only gaskets on the bottom, and then the plate is basically pressure fit to the top. Now, my initial thought when hearing something like that tells me, okay, you have something soft here and something hard here, so the plate's going to hit the hard thing and it's going to sound weird. Turns out it doesn't. It sounds fine. So similar to like the Angel by West Foxtrot, or Cable Car Designs, pardon. In terms of the premise, it sounds like it shouldn't work, but it works just fine. Yeah, we can see a decent amount of complexity over here. See that? Got multiple layers of machining here. So you've got your initial outside, which is basically the part that you gonna focus. You want to focus? Thanks, dude. All right, so we've got the actual chamfer on the outside, then we've got a drop down to basically the mounting ledge where the top would meet the bottom. Then underneath that, you've got the actual plate landing area. And then in between all of that, you've got the screwless mount. Screwless mount. So decent amount of machining. This is actually one of the more complex tops I've seen. And I can see that in terms of the actual like tool runs, that in order to save the teeniest bit on machining cost, And instead of doing like inside chamfered edges, the tool actually, I don't know how to explain it because I lack the vocabulary, but traditionally you would cut up, you would cut left, and you'd kind of be limited by, you know, your tool size. You can't take, you know, a hard corner greater than a certain amount of millimeters or angle, for example. But in this case, it bites into the inside side of the top and then makes that turn. And I presume that that either saves a tool change for the CNC machine or makes it a little bit cheaper or easier to do. I've never seen that. That's actually really interesting. So from the top, if we look at the same bit, the top is just simple, right? It's got a chamfer on it, nice and easy, looks clean. And then on the inside, we see this. And we actually see it for basically all the 90-degree bits, which is very interesting. This is the first time I see that. I'll find out, not for you guys, I'll find out for me, like why that was done, but I presume it's just to make machining a little bit more simple. But yeah, very cool. Top is a very, very cool top. I just wish it wasn't screwless so I wouldn't scratch the shit out of it. That'd be great. All right, let's have ourselves a look at the bottom. Now, we've seen the bottom. It's fairly simple. You've got the little brutal butt and the cheeks. You got the cannon. Got a nice little cutout, fantastically done. Looks like it's using a unified C3 daughter board because, of course, it is. It's designed by AI03. Bottom is actually fairly simple. I mean, it could be further simplified just by removing these two ledges entirely, kind of like the Cycle 7 did. So you just have a raised strip here and a raised strip here, and then essentially this is empty, which I think the Cycle 7 also did for a similar purpose, which was saving money during machining, because I presume like the tool doesn't have to turn, it just goes all the way through the board. So traditionally the gasket should not mount directly to the case. Traditionally the gaskets will mount on the plate. However, as I explained, Canon Keys needs to kind of get their shit together, and if somebody gets multiple plates, they should get multiple gasket kits, and in addition to this, maybe step up the amount of gaskets in the delivered kit by like 25%, because nobody's going to be perfect. Okay. So we have our screwless points where the top mounts to the bottom. Very cool. We can see that there's very, very little small alignment ridges. So there's not really alignment pillars, and generally you don't need alignment pillars for seamless because the top will just sit over the bottom. But we see this little bit right here, this little bit right here. And I presume that's just for a teensy bit of additional alignment, which is very cool because it's not at all necessary. All right, we've got our JST cable channel, which is fine. And yep, the cable actually fits in there just fine. It's a non-sleeved cable, which is great. That means if you've got a lot of flex in your PCB plate assembly, you're not going to bottom out on the cable because the cable is really thin. It's fine. Cable length is great. Love to see it. All right. Now the elephant in the room. The cast zinc weights. So let's start from the very top. Is there anything wrong with using cast weights? Not really. As long as it can, you know, actually fit into the shape that it should, that's fine. If it's internal only and it doesn't need to look super pretty and have like the most refined edges, fine. If you look, you can see that like this edge is not like super clean, for example, you know. And that's pretty much it. Like besides that, kind of looks fine. Kind of looks fine. And then zinc. This is the first board that I know of that has used zinc weights. Now, generally, when it comes to keyboard weights, I for one, prefer brass over steel because brass is essentially softer And as a result, we'll kind of deepen the sound a little bit more compared to a steel weight. Obviously, this depends on a million other factors. But going off that logic, zinc is the soft part of the brass. So when you mix zinc and copper, you get brass. But zinc is like the softest part, which is very cool. So actually super interesting. From a sound perspective, makes the board sound great. I maybe would have gone with like a larger bar, but maybe a larger bar would have been like more difficult to quality control to make sure it's not warped or bent or anything like that. And having, 3 easily repeatable designs works just fine. I think it works just fine. I'm absolutely not complaining. At first, I thought it was, I was like, oh, they're trying to save a couple bucks, SMH my head, and they're going to sacrifice sound quality or finishing, but it's internal only. So who cares about finishing? I mean, maybe you do, but internal weights don't need to look super pretty, dude. Their job there is to do 2 things: to structurally sound the case, so vibrations that go through the physical material basically dampen in the weights, and 2, for any sound that comes off the plate PCB assembly and hits the bottom of the case, to basically hit something a little bit softer to deepen up the sound a little bit, and to also like reduce the volume of the sound a little bit, which is fine. Very cool. Do I think I have nothing to say? Like, this could not be improved. It's fine. They did a good job. All right. That's the bottom. Let's talk about our plate PCB assembly. Now, there's a lot of ham hairs in there, and those of you that know, Ham is an orange boy who lives in this room and is not allowed to leave because he's in ham jail. So please bear with all the random cat hairs you see everywhere for the next. Ham, how old are you? Who knows? All right, so here I'm presuming the palm plate. Now that I actually like see it in hand, that is the palm plate. But I will show you the aluminum plate because the aluminum plate doesn't have switches in it. All right, here we are. All right, first things first, it is a universal plate, which I do not like. Ooh, actually, this is a good solution to a universal plate. So generally the issue with a universal plate is by opening up the ISO cutout, when you try and put a switch in this spot where your pipe key would be, you don't necessarily hold it from all 4 sides. So it could end up being a little bit crooked. The second thing is not having a bridge of material here also means that it's not going to sound exactly like it would if it had plate contact on all 4 sides. However, besides that, universal plates are kind of okay as long as it's well done. We can see a lot of screw points here, and I assume those are for the spacers or I'm missing the word. I know what they're called. I just can't freaking remember. Standoffs. For the standoffs that will attach this to the PCB if it's hot swap. That way you can remove your switches without your PCB falling. So I assume that's where the top meets the bottom for alignment. Plate is very simple. There's no meme cuts. There's no nonsense. There's a little cut here, which fine. That does help out. Having a little bit more open area under the spacebar can help reduce the spacebar volume. We can see here on the palm plate, they've done something similar, but no meme cuts, no nonsense, good solid plate. This actually feels like a 6063 plate, not a 5052. I might be wrong. It's kind of hard to tell just from it's hard to tell without like deforming the plate and finding out. But good, simple plate. Very good, simple plate. No complaints. And let's have a look at the PCB. So from the top, what can we see? We can see a little bit of co-branding, AI03, Canon keys. Cool. We got a dedicated reboot. Okay. We've got a dip switch for regular boot and recovery. Okay. I assume that just means DFU. So that's DFU. That's standard. Interesting. This is using a RP controller. Let's check it out. Check that out right there. See the little raspberry? It's an RP controller. Now, I'm not a big fan of ARM controllers, but it's one specific model, if I'm not mistaken, of ARM controllers that just has like a super long boot up time for some reason. The ones that actually have the picture of the raspberry on it so far have been fine. So no complaints. And there are advantages to these type of controllers, big advantages that I do like, where you don't need any software to be able to actually flash this with new firmware. You simply plug it in, holding in escape, it goes into bootloader, and it opens up a mass storage device on your computer, and you can literally just drag the file in, which is amazing. It's very, very handy. All right, so besides that, we've got 2 cuts for flex. They're very nice, thin cuts. They're not huge. Generally, what I would go towards is, hey, if you're going to have cuts, at least give us something to cover the cuts, like a little silicone. But this is so incredibly thin that it's fine. And I never necessarily noticed any sort of sound problems with this. All right, what else have we got? Obviously, we got where the JST goes, but let's just have a quick little look. There are markings here, not for every single switch. So for example, like the E, the W, the R, not marked. However, the more important things are marked, where if you're using 2U or 1U in your numpad, it will say 2U or 1U. Very cool. For your bottom row, it'll tell you, all right, 1.5, 1.5, 6.257U, actually very handy, 1.5, 1.5. Stepped, regular. So this is actually handy for people that are not like super competent with just being able to slap switches in perfectly for their layout. It happens. Sometimes you put it in the wrong hole, but this allows you the opportunity where if you flip it and you're about to solder it and you see, wait a second, that says 1.25U. I don't want a 1.25U. I know it requires a little bit of brain power to get there, but still very cool. Same thing with ANSI and ISO, except if you're accidentally doing ISO instead of ANSI, brother, you've got some problems. Besides that, though, solid PCB. Let's look at one of the pads. So one thing that I have been noticing on some boards is that the not necessarily like Canon keys boards, is sometimes the pads are not as wide or big as they should be, and it's kind of uncomfortable to build with. Now, these are good. These are good, big pads. Now, while soldering, trying to get in on a big pad is nice and easy. You can just, you just touch it there. But a small pad, you kind of have to like get in there with the tip and like rub it around until you make contact. But solid pads. Very, very solid pads. And let's actually talk about these switches. So these are the Vertex V1s. Now again, disclosure, Vertex sent me the V1s for me to basically try out and review, but I don't review switches. I don't review switches because a lot of people think switch reviewing is, a very specific science with machines and force gauges and all of that. For me, switches are more about the experience and how they make me feel and what I notice when I type on those switches, because yeah, it's the same thing as high-end audio. Looking at graphs for high-end audio is stupid. Listening to them with your ears is not stupid. So these are JWICs, which is kind of interesting because JWICs have historically been kind of sussy. Now, JWICs are the same thing as JWKs. Same brand, okay? Or same manufacturer. Now, I've got a Vertex V1 here, and I've done a few builds with them. And I've pretty much used all of them. Like, I don't have enough left for an actual solid build. But the general premise is these are brand new molds. So that means that they should structurally look different than previous JWKs. Also, they are factory lubed. So let's go ahead and open one of these real quick. There we go. And let's open a random alpaca because why not? It's the only JWK I could find right now. All right, so let's have ourselves a look. Just super quick. Okay, this is a keyboard review, not a switch review. So, and generally I do not review switches. So let's just take it apart. There we go. So alpaca, this for some reason has a random gold spring in it. Let's not talk about that. Let's just get it out of there. And this one has what looks like a decent looking spring, which we're going to talk about. So let's have a look at the stems, let's have a look at the tops, and let's have a look at the bottoms. We can see structurally there are differences between these two. This comes out further, this is lower, two little nubs, long little slat, shorter slat. So okay, structurally, different molds for tops confirmed. Let's look at the bottoms. All right, we can see that they look similar enough. Do they not? They actually look remarkably similar. We can tell that the stem hole is a little bit different in shape, but besides that, looks pretty similar. Looks pretty similar. Yeah, bottoms might actually be very similar bottoms. And finally, let's have a look at the stem. There's our alpaca stem. Here's our V1 stem. And you can tell that V1 stem has long pole or long PP. Now, generally, I'm not a long PP enjoyer, but I've kind of been enjoying it on the V1s. Now, visual inspections aside, we'll talk about my actual experience because it's all about the experience. Now, factory looped switches have gotten a lot better recently. Okay, factory looped switches used to be a nightmare to deal with, and now they actually do pretty decent. Pretty much, you got GAT Pros, you've got these, the Vertex V1s. Basically, any factory looped switch that's mid-price, let's say around 30 cents, pretty good experience. Now, I've been using the V1s on the Brutal 1800. I've used it on both my Arus. I may have stuck it in something else that I don't even remember. Unclear, but I have been actually enjoying them. Now, they sound fine and they feel fine. The factory lube is super well done. I mean, you guys saw the interior. It looked shiny, but you couldn't physically see any lube. That's how you know it's well factory lubed. The sound sounds pretty decent. Honestly, no complaints. It's not sound like a JWK. It kind of sounds like a full nylon Gateron. Maybe a little bit deeper because of the lube. Imagine a full nylon Gateron, maybe lube with some 107 oil. That's kind of the sound profile. I mean, you're going to hear it when I do the typing test, and you've been hearing it for a few reviews now, just to give you an idea. They sound good. My only issue was there is some noticeable spring variance. And here's the thing. With Gaterons, with cherries, with basically anything, the factory springs are not going to be great. And like, if you're going to go and you're actually going to make like custom molds and custom stems, or at the very least custom tops and custom stems, at least go out and get springs that you can reliably get like 0.5 gram of variance, maybe 1 gram of variance. If I'm not mistaken, the grams of variance on these are close to 20 grams, and it's noticeable. You can tell. That's my only issue with these switches. And if they were, for example, just like, let's say they were 35 cents instead of 31 cents, but they came with a better, more consistent spring, I would recommend these with my eyes closed, because it is amazing to just grab a switch out of a bag and put it into a board and not have to worry about it and get a good, lubed, consistent experience out of the box. That would be great. That would absolutely be great. All right. It's enough about that. That's my general experience with the V1s, which is very good. Swap the springs. Also, factory lube has been getting really good, except for the Cherry MX2A. If you're watching this, do not buy those. Okay, so let's talk about the feel and sound of this board as well as my build recommendations. Now, sound is Western sounding. So on the spectrum of neutral clacky, higher pitch Korean, super Western thocky, it's a little bit Western because of these ink weights, because of my choice of a palm plate. It sounds pretty good. Oh, and using PBT keycaps as well, like thick PBT keycaps. This is CRP green Hangul from round 4 Chinese run. So sound with this particular plate, a little bit towards the Western side, a little bit thockier than you'd anticipate it to sound. With an aluminum plate, I reckon it would sit right in the middle. Maybe go a little bit towards Korean. Now, as you can tell, there's no foam. There's none of that nonsense. This is just a good, well-built board. That's all you need. You don't need foam for this. You don't want foam for this. This is a good sounding, good feeling, well-designed board. Now, in terms of the feel, again, we got gasket pads on the bottom, but no gasket pads on the top. I expected it to feel weird. Feels just fine. So you can get a little bit of bounce on it, which I'll fully assemble it and show you. Should I do that now? Let's do that now, as I give you my build recommendations. All right, let's see how difficult it is to actually put this JST in. Oh wow, so difficult. After struggling with so many boards, that's like a breath of fresh air. All right, let's get our top. There we go. Now, generally for build recommendations, if you're going to pick up one of these, and listen, I know that I've complained a lot, and I complain out of love, okay? If I'm complaining, it's because I love what I'm seeing, and I want it to be better, all right? I mean, I would love if this wasn't screwless, but hey, what are you going to do? I do very strongly recommend this board, and to be fair, you don't own an 1800, or if you've never really experienced an 1800, I would recommend you just pick up an old, like a $20 like G80 1800 just to check out the layout. Like, it's a very functional, very nice layout if you're, a person that does business and work and spreadsheets and stuff like that. For something like this, you've got a lot of choices when it comes to builds. I mean, you could theoretically get out a very, very decent silent build out of this for the office if you're afraid to take anything that's too loud. And to be fair, this is not a loud board. Thanks to having gaskets on one side, thanks to having the zinc weights, it helps mute the board a little bit, but not in a bad way. Okay, it's not muted as in shoved full of foam. It's muted as in the loudness is lower, which is not a bad thing. Okay, I really wish this was more magnetic. Come on. All right, we got it. So it comes with the alu plate by default, if I'm not mistaken. And I would actually recommend that most people go for the plastic plate, because with the plastic plate, you can actually get a little bit of flex. Okay, hello? Are you no screw in the hole? Hello? Please? Oh boy. All right, give me a second. Something looks misaligned here. Am I just stupid? No, it looks like there's literally something in the way. What are you? All right, well, let's figure it out. See, just screwless is just problem after problem after problem, dude. It's just like, it's just such a pain. It's such a pain to deal with, dude. Like honestly, like if this board was not screwless, this board would be absolutely perfect. Like this board would be like an 11 out of 10. Like taking into consideration my bias for 1800. Like I do not. Oh, cool! I was screwing into the JST cable. That is generally why we do sleeve cables, but in this case, no sleeving is generally better for like feel. You don't bottom out on it. Generally better for sound because it's less of a thing that, sound can reflect off of. But I sure hope that the cable is fine. Let's plug it in and make sure. All right, does the letter A work? The letter A does work. Does the letter L work? The letter L works. That's all we need to test. Okay. All right, so I would absolutely recommend a plastic plate because it makes it quieter, and again, not in a bad way. I really, really like the sound profile of this board where like it's a modest 1800. It sounds like a modest 1800. It's not trying to wow anybody when it comes to like super loud, super boomy, super thocky, something like that. No, this sits very, very comfortably exactly where it should sit. And that is as a professional board. It's a great board for work. And, maybe some of you don't work or can't take your boards to work or anything like that. And, maybe 1800 is absolutely not for you. But as like a daily work board, this thing has been amazing. And I've enjoyed it so much. I, I say plastic because plastic is going to be a lot less clacky than the alu plate. I say if you could maybe go with maybe Loop Gat Pros if you're trying to not do a silent build, or something like Milky Tops, or what else? Would I go full nylon cherries? Maybe if you're gonna properly lube up some MX blacks, I'd consider that. I'd consider that as well. Uh, Maybe stick to PBT over ABS, though. If you own both, obviously try it out, see what works best with you. Like I really like the cohesion of the build that I've gotten here, which has been like somewhat deep sounding switches, very deep sounding keycaps, and a plastic plate. Not to make it super thocky, but just have the little flavor, it's the little something, you know. Alternatively, like if you're going to use this at home, right, and you want it to just be like large in terms of its energy, go alu plate, go ABS caps, throw in whatever switches you like. You're going to have a good time. You're absolutely going to have a good time. This is shy of the screwless debacle. A fantastic board. All right, and let me show you what type of bounce or flex we can actually get out of this. All right, let's check it out. So, forgive the dust. All right, what I am going to do now is I'm going to press down very hard in the center of the board. Okay, now I am going to press softly on the far side of the board. Now I'm going to press softly on the close end of the board. Okay, now I'm going to type heavily. Now I'm going to type medium hardness. You can see that there's a little bit of bounce no matter what you do, which also I apologize for that being so bright. I didn't calibrate it for daylight yet. But you've got a little bit of a softness. Got a little bit of a softness. You're not getting an immense amount of flex. It's a little bit of flex near the center, but when like physically typing normal hardness instead of just pressing down as hard as you can, it's not supposed to be noticeable flex. Okay, it's just supposed to be a soft, comfortable typing experience, and it is a soft, comfortable typing experience. It's been great. This has absolutely been great. Ah, one thing I didn't uh, talk about, the front height is actually super, super low, by the way. Like it's under 18 millimeters, by the way. So like very, very comfortable board to use. Like if you've used like a low front height board, it goes hard. Ah, all right. So what more is there to say? Not much else. I'll give you a typing test followed by a summary. First of all, I love this board. Okay, I'm gonna keep this board. I'm gonna pay for this board. Good board. Okay, this is a 9 out of 10 board. This could have been a 10 out of 10 board if it wasn't trying to do the one dumb thing, the one gimmick that it did, which was screwless. Maybe if the implementation could somehow be improved to factor in, idiots scratching their cases, that'd be great. But this was designed as a no bullshit board. There's no foams, there's none of that nonsense. It's function, 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 but still keeping the form, the Brutal series design aesthetic, which is very cool. Uh, it's by AI03, who's one of the better designers of our time. It's in stock by Canon Keys, one of the better vendors of our time. It sounds good. It feels good. It looks pretty good. And it's a joy to use this board. And, if you've never really tried 1800, maybe go out, spend 25 bucks on a laser printed G80 1800 just to get a feel for it and see if you actually like the layout. And if you like the layout, I strongly recommend this board. And if you absolutely hate 1800, then fine, this board is not for you. But honestly, this has been a wonderful experience, short of the screwless. And I'm very, very happy with this board. Yeah, I mean, this board is, unironically, this board might end up being one of the boards that I use more than any other board. And I've got like 40 or 50 boards or something like that. This might be the board that I keep going back to because it's a very comfortable typing experience. The sound profile is unique in a good way. It straddles the line between, not being too punchy, but still sounding good. I do like that. I like that very, very much. And with, even taking into account things like, the Cycle 7 now existing and the Cycle 80 coming soon and the Cycle 65 after that. And, eventually somebody's going to come knocking and be able to offer an 1800 at like half the price. But I think for 400 bucks in stock, this is great considering the amount of love and effort that's been put into it. I think that no matter what happens in terms of competition, this is still a really, really, really nice board. And I don't think it's been getting the attention that it deserves. Also, for those of you that just skipped to the summary, shame on you. Go back and watch it. Go. Get some coffee, get some popcorn. Get some coffee flavored popcorn and watch the rest of the video. Anyway, I like the board very much. Thank you to everybody that helped develop this board. I know I did not review the screws. There's a reason. Thank you. Goodbye.